Thank you for joining us. One of the concerns many of us have is our health and that of others around us. Medical research is continuously producing realistic expectations of effective new treatments and cures for many chronic diseases. This research is taking place worldwide and in Israel as well. Today we will hear from Professor Tamir Ben-Hur, head of the Department of Neurology at Hadassah Medical Centers in Israel, who specializes in stem cell research. Visiting from Russia and joining us also are two scientists with in silico medicine, Schastnaya and Polina Mamoshina. They will share exciting information on their areas of expertise with Bill Faloon, co-founder of Life Extension Foundation, following these messages.
You know you need CoQ10 and fish oil for your heart. You also know you need a multivitamin to maintain your health. But what you don't know is that an award-winning CoQ10, fish oil, and multivitamin are all made by Life Extension. Why settle for less than the power of science, the power of life, the power of Life Extension?
At Gardens Wellness Center, we provide a full menu of holistic services under one roof. Services to heal the body through chiropractic care, acupuncture, and colon hydrotherapy, and services to heal the mind through hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, and life coaching. We practice functional and Chinese medicine and offer a full herbal pharmacy. Visit us today and take charge of your health.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful, a miracle. Oh, it was beautiful, magical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable. Oh, intellectual, cynical.
Find magic again. Sprout by HP. With Intel RealSense technology inside, now you can bend the rules of creativity outside.
Superman. What does he have to do with science? Let's have a closer look. Even the mighty Superman is constructed of building blocks. But can you tell what role this simple brick will finally acquire in the whole organism? To build the organism, you need first to replicate the building blocks to a large quantity and then instruct them to a specific destination and function. Stem cells, which are the subject of my talk, are very similar. This simple-looking small brain stem cell does not know to perform the complex task of specialized brain cells. Well, the thing that makes it so special is its potential. Its potential that makes it the resource from which brain tissue is generated. First, it can proliferate, here after a couple of days, and then to form a sphere of stem cells, and then the cells can be instructed to stop proliferating, to migrate out of the sphere, and to acquire an identity, or in biological terms, to differentiate into one of the various types of specialized brain cells, such as the different neurons and the various supporting cells of the brain.
With us now are two brilliant scientists from Russia, Polina and Jane, and Bill Faloon. It's a pleasure and honor to have you with us today. I can't reach you, but Bill, always good to...
Thank you, Richard.
So Bill, here we are sitting at a table with intelligentsia. And it is, I hate to say, probably largely because of these two eminent scientists. What are your thoughts on that?
I've seen their presentations. They are remarkable. They consist of what we already think can extend healthy longevity, and then they translate that into what is going to occur in the relatively near future, where people are going to live radically longer in a healthy state than what they are right now.
Jane, what brings you to Florida?
We are here with Polina for the hair research conference in Miami because we work for in silico medicine, and we are focused on in silico drug discovery for aging and age-related diseases. And Polina is our skin aging expert, and right now we are trying to get into hair research as well. So we established collaborations with researchers that do research on hair, and we were very honored to speak here to give our speeches on classifying aging as a disease and artificial intelligence in aging research.
Tell us more about your organization, please.
Well, we're based in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Johns Hopkins give us space. So we have a few R&D centers in Moscow, in Russia, and we have a lot of people all over the world, in Canada, in Israel, and China. And right now we are really big company. We have about 40 bioinformatician people work with us, mathematician people work for us, and some of the geneticists, as I am, and bioengineers, as Jane.
What astonishes me, Bill, is they're so young and so expert in their fields. How do you explain that?
This is an observation that has been very pleasant for me to encounter. Individuals who are young and were not even known to me up until the time I see their presentation, and I find they're doing high-tech research with the same objective that life extension has of extending the human lifespan in a way that older people won't fall ill, they'll remain healthy, and they'll live for perhaps an indefinite time period. We are evolving that quickly, and it's an honor to see younger individuals devoting so much of their time to it.
This program you're on is going to be also on the Shalom Show on television, which has a great connection, of course, with Israel. Tell us about your company's connection with Israel.
We have a collaborator in Israel called Champions Ecology. They have a really fascinating PDX models. It's a mice with the immune system that mimics human system, immune system. So you take a tumor biopsy from cancer patient, from a tumor, and you put it into the mice and expand it, and then you can test the drugs on these mice. And actually recent studies show that these mice with the tumors are equal to the normal tumor in a human. So it's a good thing to test a lot of drugs, to find new drugs for the patient, to find the proper drugs to treat the cancer, to defeat the cancer. So we work with them. We use our pipelines to do drug repurposing and drug discovery, use their models, and to validate our predictions on drugs.
And what she's talking about is combating a problem that every elderly person faces. It's called immune senescence. It's when the healthy immune function declines, and unfortunately some senile memory cells stay around and emit inflammatory cytokines. So an older person suffers from chronic inflammation but inadequate immune response to new viruses, bacteria, malignant cells. That's why cancer elevates so quickly. As people grow older, their immune system is collapsing.
Absolutely fascinating, and of course this is an international essential initiative and endeavor. Bill, you're involved in research not only in the United States but elsewhere. Tell our audience about that.
The Life Extension Foundation is funding about 20 independent research projects at this very moment aimed at finding cures for cancer, ways to slow aging, and most excitingly, we are identifying mechanisms in which we may be able to reverse the aging process in elderly human beings. This is the research that's so exciting because aging is a disease that causes all these other disorders that we associate with growing older. If we can conquer aging, people will not get cancer, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's as frequently. We can easily then deal with a few outliers who still contract these medical problems. So curing aging will cure virtually everything.
Jane, what would you add to that?
Well, I agree with Mr. Faloon, and our approach in silico medicine is that we believe that pathway activation analysis is the future to create new drugs, to identify new targets for therapy, and we also do drug repurposing, and the whole mission of in silico medicine is to prolong healthy longevity. So I have to just to agree with Mr. Faloon.
Maybe you should all join forces and create one big mega.
That will be great.
Well, what's happening is the public and certainly the scientific community is awakening to the fact that the resources are out there to make this a reality. And if we just bring these resources together, we're going to have synergy. In other words, the sum of the parts is going to greatly, when it comes together, equal what they were before. So the secret to extending healthy human lifespan will be to coordinate. So it's a great idea. You know, the public has such a challenge in understanding the concept of transhumanism, where the human brain is going to interface with a computer, maybe a computer the size of a microchip in the brain or outside the brain, and confer immortality perhaps in an electronic form. Now, you were just describing how neural nets work, and it enabled me to understand a lot more how this is really going to happen. Maybe you can explain a little bit to the audience how these neural nets are transforming our view of what the human brain really is capable of doing.
Of course. Well, the whole idea of neural networks is not new because it was developed like in the middle of the 20th century, and it evolved during this time. And the deep neural networks, they are inspired by how the human brain works. In several sciences, they established a special doctrine and stating that neurons are obviously logic units, so that they can perform analysis that happens in the brain of a human. Deep neural networks are used in an area of machine learning called deep learning, I think that this is the future of how we can achieve artificial intelligence, because these neural networks, they mimic how our brain works, and this potentially has no theoretical limits. So I think that this interface, the connection between computer and human, will be achieved very, very soon, because technology is now really fascinating, and the goal, our aim is near to us right now.
It's tremendous. The way you presented it made it so simple to understand that this technology is going to evolve. And of course, Ray Kurzweil was the proponent who's written so many books about it. And Ray continues to believe that perhaps within the next 20 to 30 years, artificial intelligence and our own biological brain, they're going to merge together. The singularity will occur, and people are just going to have so much more neurological power. They're going to wonder, how did they ever survive with just this biology in place? So it's tremendous what's going on.
Absolutely.
So Polina, what are your plans for the future?
Well, I'm trying to find some new drugs. So as I said, it's already clinical trials for metformin for longevity. But some of the drugs, as rapamycin, have a lot of severe side effects. It's because the rapamycin is a mTOR inhibitor, but it inhibits both complex of mTOR, mTOR1 and mTOR2. So it's really necessary to find some new drugs that will be inhibit only mTOR1 complex and don't have any severe side effects. So for a near future, I want to find some new drugs that will prevent or slow down aging, and particularly skin aging. So actually I'm focused on skin aging because it's really accessible, like tissue. You can do punch biopsy and find some new things, find some new biomarkers of aging on skin, on gene expression level, on protein level. So I want to find some new drugs because, well, on market we don't have really, really good drugs. We have only like hyaluronic acid extraction, maybe some thing that can bring water back to your face, but that's all. We don't have any good treatment.
Fascinating. And you know, Bill, our audience watching this show, wherever they may be, are listening and are very curious and intrigued, but I'm sure they know all about you, but I'm sure they'd like to know about your background and what made you get into your area of science.
Well, actually, my parents kind of inspired me to go to do aging research. I get my biological. I was graduated from MSU, Moscow State University. It's like the largest university in Russia. So I get my bachelor's degree in geneticist, but I'm started to work with the stem cells because, like, stem cells therapy and stem cells by themselves are able to produce new tissues, new cells in our body. This is how we can rejuvenate our body. We can just grow some new organs. This is why I want to research them. And actually, my father is really, like, maybe not real old, but he's 60 now. I'm 22. And it's a really old kind of marriage with my mother. And I want to make him really healthy for now. He's still working, he's a pilot. It's a hard work for him, and he needs to have a really good health for that.
Beautiful goal and beautiful family. Jane, tell us about your story.
I've been a very strange kid because since I was a little girl, I understand that this research, gerontology and fighting aging, is the only thing that makes sense to do. So I got my bachelor's degree in bioengineering, and as Polina, I graduated from Lomonosov Moscow State University, which I'm very grateful because this was a very, very good education. And right now I'm enrolled in my master's program and I'm studying bioengineering as well. And I feel very enthusiastic to make a difference to this field.
Most inspiring.
Let me follow up on this, because what is fascinating, the audience has got to understand that we've been involved in this since the 1970s. And when I would talk to young girls about what I did for a living, I said, well, I want to make people live forever, I want to slow and reverse aging. None of them accepted it. They would rebel. They would say, well, everyone gets old and everyone dies. What do you want to do anything about that for? And I thought the answer was obvious, but not one person accepted it. Not one person ever accepted it until around 1994. I started noticing young girls were terrified of aging, they tell me. All of a sudden, the pieces all came together. Now, I don't know what major event enabled that to occur, but people nowadays are rebelling against aging, no matter what age they are. I mean, older people are going in for all kind of cosmetic surgery, which of course is just a superficial fix. We're looking to systemically reverse aging so that people grow biologically younger. That's our objective. But nonetheless, you see the population is rebelling against the outward appearance of aging, and they're also thinking about the internal effects by taking all kind of drugs on a preventative basis. Statin drugs are the most popularly prescribed out there right now, probably because people don't want to have a heart attack due to high cholesterol. Antihypertensive drugs are regularly used because people don't want to have a stroke just because their blood pressure is too high. So we've got all this data and people are following it. So we are seeing the life extension revolution occur right before our eyes.
Fascinating times. Wonderful interview. Great pleasure to have you here. And Bill, always a pleasure. And Jane, can't reach you, Polina. I wish you a lot of success in the future. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
We continue now with Professor Tamir Ben-Hur, head of the Department of Neurology at Hadassah Medical Centers in Israel.
Now, our brain has very limited capacity to repair itself. So almost 20 years ago, when I started working with stem cells, it was with a very naive notion that we will use stem cells to replace missing and damaged cells and tissues in the brain. We thought that we will grow stem cells in culture, inject them into the injured tissue in the brain, and that the cells will manage to integrate in the complex brain network and fix it. As it turned out, surprisingly turned out, we found, our work showed that stem cells have different additional therapeutic properties that we did not think of. We found that transplanted stem cells can affect their local surrounding in powerful, beneficial effects. Think of the injured brain as a burning forest. You can try and plant new trees. Maybe they'll survive. Probably not, but if you pour water, it will put out the fire, and at the same time it will start the growth of surviving plants to renew the forest in a natural way. And very similarly, transplanted stem cells can inhibit inflammatory processes in the brain that cause injury, and they can protect the actual brain cells from death, and they can even promote and facilitate repair processes that are performed by the brain's own cells. These repair processes are the very same element that failed in the first place. So instead of transplantation for replacing missing and damaged cells in the brain, it turned out that transplanted stem cells help the brain to help itself. And I would like to take you through the journey of how this came into reality and then open a small window to the future. We focused our efforts to multiple sclerosis, the most common cause of neurologic disability in young adults, non-traumatic disability, and MS is really tough. And we wished that maybe we could offer some hope to our patients whom we accompany along the course of the disease. The disease is caused by recurrent attacks of the patient's own immune system against their brains. Basically, the immune cells attack the nerve coverings, the myelin, which cover the nerve extensions, the axons, and strip them naked. Now, myelin coverings insulate axons very similar to coverings of electrical wires. And they also support the axons with nourishment. So once naked, the axons become dysfunctional and they cannot survive for a long time. So after chronic loss of myelin, there is eventually loss of brain wiring. And obviously, brain wiring is necessary for the different parts of the brain to talk with each other and for the brains to transmit orders to the body. So loss of wiring leads to dysfunction, disability, problems in walking, in seeing, in sensing, and so on. MS patients often, in the early phases, they recover functionally. But in the later, chronic phase of the disease, the brain has exhausted its reserve and cannot support anymore the survival of its nerves and axons, and the patients deteriorate into chronic disability. So how can we prevent that from happening? Seemingly, this is simple. If we rebuild or regenerate the myelin coverings, then that will restore function and prevent further injury and dysfunction. Now, myelin is produced by a specialized type of brain cell called oligodendrocyte. So the original thought was to transplant stem cells that can generate oligodendrocytes in the host brain to regenerate myelin and therefore to restore function and prevent disability. And with that thought in mind, we first went to learn how to grow these brain stem cells and transplanted them into the brains of mice. We transplanted the cells to mice that have a disease called experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. This disease is caused by triggering inflammation in the brain with an immune attack against the myelin in the mice brain, very similar to human MS patients. And we followed these animals, their clinical course in transplanted animals and in control non-transplanted animals. And what we observed is that while sick animals had significant difficulties in walking, the transplanted animals could walk much better. So we asked ourselves how this happens. Did the transplanted cells indeed become oligodendrocytes and regenerate myelin in the brains of the mice? And to answer that, I would like to share with you for a minute some of the difficulties and frustrations of scientific research. Think for a minute. Our brain is inside that closed box, and how can you tell what's going on inside? For example, how can you identify the cells that you have transplanted to the brain? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Or when do you take out the brain for pathological inspection? Obviously, the single snapshot of pathological inspection may not represent the dynamic processes that are going on. And most important, how can you tell whether the cells that you have introduced to the brain really act the way you thought they will? Maybe they induce their effects by a different mechanism. So we labeled our cells prior to transplantation in a way that will enable us to recognize them in the host brain and differentiate them from the host brain's own cells. And we took out brain tissue for pathological inspection at different time points, different stages of the disease. And we first saw that the transplanted stem cells can migrate large distances in the brain. All of us have stem cells in our brain sitting there throughout our lives. All of us. What are they doing there? I believe that they do not just sit there waiting for injury and repair. I believe that it is their physiological role to monitor the brain environment and to shape it towards a healthy one. And I believe that it may be their failure to do so that contributes to conditions of illness, like in aging and in neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's disease. So perhaps if we learn how to strengthen the function of these resident adult brain stem cells, we can help the brain to protect itself from degenerative processes like in Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative disorders. So does this mean that stem cells define the age of the brain? Or if we revive the stem cell pool of the brain, maybe we can rejuvenate the entire brain? I will leave you with that thought and what it holds for the future. With a never-ending story of science, just think what the story may be a few years from now. Thank you.
This concludes our special show for today on medical research. I'm Richard Peretz. Thank you for being with us.